이어서 최성미 한국유교문화진흥원 책임연구원님의 주제 발표가 있겠습니다. 연구원님 앉으신 자리에서 발표 부탁드립니다.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is great pleasure to meet you all. And my name is Seongmi Choi. I'm senior researcher at the Institute of Korean Confucian Culture. Today, I would like to share some thought on the topic, digital curations and authenticity of documentary heritage. Specifically examining this issue through the lens of UNESCO Memory of the World program, especially documentary heritage is commonly understood as an object of preservation. However, the question I would like to invite you to consider today is slightly different. If we digitalize a record, is the memory contained within that record preserved as well? Well, let us imagine a scene. There is an ancient piece of documentary heritage. We photographed it in resolution, converted into image, and uploaded it to online archive. Now, more people have access to these records. UNESCO has long emphasized that documentary heritage must be protected and made accessible to everyone. People must be able to access the records, comprehend their meanings, and understand why they matter. In this regard, the memory of the world is not merely a registration system, it is a framework that asks what the world remembers and how we will share the memory with the next generations. The core argument of today's presentation can be summarized in 3 sentences. First, digitalization turns records into data. Second, digitation or digital curations transform data into knowledge. Third, authenticity is maintained when the knowledge is accurately connected and verified. However, records in these states are still close to isolated, siloed data. We should further structure them and reveal which events connected to, which individual related to, and what kinds of places and institutions reflect. This process of structuring is precisely what we call digital curation. Digital curations is about designing the context and relationship of the records. Okay, let us reflect together on what documentary heritage truly is. We often think of the records merely as a document materials, with text written on paper, featuring titles and covers, and containing facts from a specific era. Of course, records are documents. However, the meaning of documentary heritage is far deeper and broader. Documentary heritage reveals how a particular society intended to pass down a memory to the future generation. Naturally, the digitalization of records is paramount important. Documentary heritage is inherently fragile in its physical forms. For example, paper degrades, ink fades, and environmental changes like that. In this sense, digitalization is a crucial starting point for preservation. The problem, however, is that such digitalization is not the final step we must take for the heritage. This is the core point of my presentation today. What more we do from here? As a researcher dedicated to studying documentary heritage, I frequently encounter limitations when using digitalized record in practice. What I truly want to know lies within more complex relationship. For example, what events is occurred and who are figures, how does it connect to, like that. So to answer these questions, simply providing images is not easy to understand at all. This is the contextual fragmentation, the very limitation of conventional digitalizations. Therefore, in this presentation, I would like to propose the shift. It is a transition not only toward the digitalizations, moving from record to data, moving toward knowledge. Through digitalization and digitations, records become data, which is essential process. However, if we stop there, records will remain fragmented materials. For documentary heritage to function as the memory of the world, we must take the next step. A digitalized archive provides us with materials. However, digital curations connects the meaning between those records. This process of digital curations goes far beyond simply uploading materials online, while conventional digital archives tell us these records exist here. But digital curations is a process that explains why this record is important, what it connects to, and how it should be read. Rather than using various overlapping terms, I will unify my terminology around the phrases. Digital curations for the remainder of this presentation, I kindly invite your close attention to the reason why. Okay, to put it another way, the difference between the digital archives and digital curations can be explained as the difference between search and explorations. For instance, if there is a specific individuals in a record, who are they? What position did they hold? Do they appear in other records, and what events are they associated with? It is difficult to find the answer to these questions in conventional archives. It moves beyond title searches to connect relationship across events, people, places, text, images, original sources, and interpretations like that. When we speak of transforming data into knowledge through digital curations, there are 4 core pillars. First is context. Second is relationships. Third is interpretations. Fourth is verifications. When these 4 pillars operate together, digitalized records truly become a knowledge. Thus far, I have discussed digital curations as a process of transforming data into knowledge. What then are the concrete objects of digital curations? They can be broadly summarized into 3 goals. First, it makes record readable. It means understanding historical background in which a record was produced, the event and people it holds, and why it must be preserved. Second, records never exist in isolation. It is connected to other records, people, places, and collective memories of communities. Third, it makes records verifiable. While information spreads rapidly in digital spaces, errors in interpretations can just as easily occur. Finally, digital curation is cultural heritage strategy that allows us to read, connect, and trust the memory of the world. Okay, here we encounter an important realizations. The memory of the world does not remain locked inside archives. The knowledge embedded in documentary heritage is continuously reinterpreted and experienced through the various contemporary forms. Take, for example, Gwanghwamun, a historical site in Korea. In the past, it was the main gate of Joseon dynasty, and space for state ritual. Today, however, Gwanghwamun served as a public place, a symbol of Seoul, and stage for K-culture experienced by people worldwide. What matters here is not the mere functional use of the space, but the fact that the memory accumulated within his historical sites are being read anew through the lens of modern social experiences. In this way, the memory of the world is preserved within the past records, yet simultaneously comes alive in present-day society. Let us look at more contemporary example. Maybe you know, movements like the global K-pop group BTS performing at Gwanghwamun. Well, I love them so much. And they demonstrated how historical spaces intersect with modern culture. A space once defined by authority and ritual has been transformed into a stage for urban culture experience by global audience. Another fascinating example is global media contents like K-pop Demon Hunters, which brilliantly reflect K-culture. What these two examples clearly illustrated is that cultural heritage is not fixed in the past. It expands into new knowledge through new media and contemporary social experiences. Yet, this raises a critical question as heritage undergoes continuous reinterpretation. What is that we must safeguard? Documentary heritage and traditional knowledges are constantly being reinterpreted and experienced in novel ways within the digital environment. This is a highly positive evolution. At the same time, however, we must seriously grapple with the issue of authenticity. When a record is digitalized, interconnected, and reinterpreted within the content, how can its original context be sustained? When traditional cultural elements are adopted by global medias, does it represent an expansion of cultural heritage, or does it signify a rupture of context? I believe the answer to this question lies not digitalization, but in digital curation. Digital curation is the very process of expanding memory while ensuring it does not lose of trustworthiness. Let us deeper into the issue of authenticity. Today, the past is becoming increasingly vivid. Blurry historical photographs are restored via AI. Damaged records corrected through digital technologies. While these technologies are incredibly fascinating, they present us with profound questions. Is a sharper image more authentic? Is moving more vivid past the truly memory? Well, I argue that this question is the starting point for understanding authenticity is right now. When we think of authenticity, we naturally think of the original object. However, the physical survival of original does not guarantee that the memory is fully preserved. The authenticity of the records does not reside solely in its physical matter. Ultimately, authenticity begins with the preservation of the original object. But it is fulfilled through the preservation of context. Does modern reinterpretation inherently compromise authenticity? I do not believe so. On the contrary, cultural heritage resonated with a wider audience when it is read and remembered in the language of the new eras. The problem is not the reinterpretation itself. The real threat is the loss of context. As I approach the conclusion of my presentations, I invite you to look at this through a broader lens. Documentary heritage of memory of the world may appear to be about preserving the past, but it is actually wide open to the present and the future. Past records do not belong solely on the bookshelves. They manifest anew in today's cities, performances, exhibitions, and human experiences. While places like Gwanghwamun may seem unchanged, the memories surrounding them continue to expand. Until now, policies regarding documentary heritage have developed primarily around preservation and access. These remain fundamentally important. However, we must now take a step further. Accordingly, I propose 3 strategic directions for the future. First, shift our focus from preservation to curation. Second, expand our paradigm from access to participation. Third, drive the transmission from data to knowledge. When this paradigm shift occurs, documentary heritage will transforming from file existing online into a living, breathing memory of the world. To conclude, let us return to the question I asked at the very beginning. If you remember, if we digitalize the record, is the memory contained within the record preserved as well? What we must transmit to the future generation is not just collection of digital files, but intelligible, meaningful memory. Record endure when they are stored, but memories come alive when they are shared. Digital curation is precisely the act of designing this very process. Today, I have explored digitalizations of documentary heritage through the lens of new approach to curation within the UNESCO Memory of the World framework. The core message is simple. Digitalization turns record into data, while digital curations transform data into knowledge, and authenticity is sustained when that knowledge is connected and verified within its proper context. The future of documentary heritage does not depend on how much data we manage to store. It depends on how deeply we understand the world's memory, how broadly we connect it, and how reliably we transmit it to the next generations. The memory of the world does not live by being stored. It thrives when it is connected, verified, and experienced. Then if we preserve today's memories within a sense of the meaning, this moment will also become a part of our memory of the world. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Once again, I'm Sungmi Choi. Thank you.